Today we go over the Star Wars franchise when it comes to the prequel trilogy era and Star Wars director and writer Rian Johnson. This is Mike Zero here. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, today I specifically wanted to go over The Last Jedi. Now, we do know that this movie has received tons of criticism and backlash since the release of the film way back in December of 2017. Now, looking at everything that has happened with this movie, there are a lot of parallels to that of the prequel trilogy era. Now, I want to go over an interview by Collider when they were questioning Rian Johnson about the prequel trilogy and its ties to The Last Jedi. Now, we do know that director J.J. Abrams will be doing this to the extreme by actually putting in prequel trilogy continuity, visually speaking, for the Star Wars fans around the world. But this is what Collider had to ask Rian Johnson, and this is what Rian Johnson had to say about the prequel trilogy era and its influence for Star Wars The Last Jedi. So the big question is, so I was watching Revenge of the Sith recently and I noticed there are a few echoes from the film to The Last Jedi, like when Anakin's talking to Padme in Revenge of the Sith, just before they face off Obi-Wan. There's some similarities there with the join me and the lashing out of Kylo to Rey and Anakin to Padme. Did you watch the prequels while you were writing? And Rian Johnson had this to say about the prequel trilogy and its connection to The Last Jedi. So he states, yeah, I watched the prequels a lot actually, and that goes for the writing, and while we were in prep, I think partially because the original trilogy was the ones that I know by heart, shot for shot. The prequels, I knew them really well, but I saw them less, so I kind of wanted to street myself in that visual language a lot more before I got into it. The notion of finding echoes, not just in the original trilogy, but also in the prequel trilogy, felt like just a really rich well to draw from. So I kept the original trilogy and also the prequels just on my iPad that I had with me all the time, and at night I would just put it on in a random spot and watch pieces of it. So he also goes over the sequence in which you have Kylo Ren in that old rebellion base, and he's looking at Rey, and he's got this sign of regret on his face, and he's looking at somebody that seems like, you know, he's got some emotions for, and the similarities to that of Anakin and Padme, and they were asking Rian Johnson about this, and that's what he had to say. That is such a great question. Will you be mad if I said that it's such a great question? I don't want to answer it, only because I think that's such a beautiful notion of what does he regret in that moment. It's the same way I think about in Revenge of the Sith. That mask of Darth Vader is coming down. That beautiful shot of Anakin's eyes right before it goes over, and you see that glimpse of, well, is it fear? Is it regret? What is it? What is going through his mind at that moment? That's that kind of moment for Ben, and I don't want to put that moment in your guy's head. I feel like that's a moment that everyone should read into themselves, but just posing that question is really beautiful. He was going over the similarities, of course, of Anakin's regret and Kylo's regret and their connections to Rey and Padme, etc. So, I want to briefly go over, you know, what you guys think about all of this. What do you think about the prequel trilogy ties, oh so slightly, in Star Wars The Last Jedi? Now, like I said before in the beginning of this video, JJ is doing this to the extreme. Episode 9 will be a utility to have heavy connections to the prequel trilogy era and to the original trilogy. And these aren't just parallels, these are going to be direct connections to the movies, visually speaking, of course, whether it's going to be characters or planets or events, whatever they may be. JJ's going to be doing this to the extreme, which is really good to hear, honestly. And that's what Rian Johnson had to say about the prequel trilogy era and its influence for Star Wars The Last Jedi, etc. So let me know what you guys think about Rian Johnson overall. I know that there's a lot of criticism involving The Last Jedi based on many decisions that were implemented in this movie. Let me just name a few. The Casino City of Canto Bight being stretched out way too long, the character of Rose, how Luke Skywalker was treated as a character, and especially the ending of the movie in which how Luke Skywalker dies, are among the biggest criticisms for The Last Jedi. But let me say one thing here is that, visually speaking, the cinematography of The Last Jedi, for the most part, especially the Octo 2 sequences, which are and were shot in IMAX, I think are beautiful. I think they're amazing, especially those sunset sequences and those night shots. Amazing. But I will say that The Last Jedi, in my point of view, does indeed have a lot of flaws when it comes to the storytelling elements, and I'm really crossing my fingers that Episode 9 will be a near flawless film, because we do know that they are not, alright, playing it safe, number one, and number two, they're going to be using that movie to tie in the prequels and the originals, and they're focusing on two characters only, Kylo Ren and Rey mainly, where everybody else is going to be used as a backdrop. So that's good news to hear. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.